This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Back in May 2014, Apple announced they'd be buying a company called Beats Electronics for $3 billion, making it the most expensive acquisition Apple's ever made. And to this day, I receive questions from viewers asking why they did it. So in this video, I'm going to explain 3 reasons why Apple bought Beats and whether or not the $3 billion purchase has paid off. This is Greg with Apple Explained, and if you want to help decide which topics I cover, make sure you're subscribed, and voting polls like this one will show up in your mobile activity feed. So why did Apple acquire Beats? Well, the answer is something we don't even need to speculate about, since Eddie Q, an Apple executive, provided 3 reasons himself, the first being talent. Beats Electronics was founded by 2 of the most powerful and influential figures in the music industry. Jimmy Iovine, who co-founded Interscope Records back in the 90s, which has since become one of the most successful labels in the world, and Dr. Dre, one of the most iconic rappers in history that's also achieved success as a record producer and audio engineer. So when these 2 forces joined together to create Beats Electronics in 2006, it wasn't too surprising that the company quickly became successful. They understood what demographic listened to their music and what type of headphone would be most appealing to that group, which was a market that more established sound companies like Sony and Bose were overlooking for years. That high level of talent and notoriety is what Apple always looks for when creating new products and services. We saw it when Tomlinson M. Holman, famous for inventing the THX sound system, was hired as Apple's audio director to work on new products like the HomePod, and we saw it with the release of Apple TV Plus, when Apple paid some of the most high-profile actors, directors, and writers like Oprah, Steven Spielberg, and J.J. Abrams to create content for their platform. Apple has always put an emphasis on attracting the best talent possible, which meant Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre fit the bill perfectly. But the question is, what was Apple going to use their talents for? And the answer is pretty clear: to help build a music streaming service. And although it isn't something you can create all by yourself, you can build a website or e-commerce store with, you guessed it, Squarespace. And the reason why I know it's possible is because I've done it myself. The AppleExplain.com website was created and is hosted using Squarespace, which I used because it's super easy and has the most website templates to choose from compared to any other site builder. But what I thought was really cool is that I could add an e-commerce store to my site when I was selling merch a couple years ago without starting over from scratch. Plus, the payment processor was built in, and I could print shipping labels straight from Squarespace. But you can sell more than physical items. It's also possible to sell digital items like ebooks and music, or services if you're a consultant or fitness coach. It really is an all-in-one platform designed to do almost anything you can imagine. And you can get all this for cheaper than you might think, especially if you use the link squarespace.com/AppleExplained, since you'll get 10% off your first purchase. You can find that link in the description. Now, that brings us to the second reason why Apple bought Beats: to access and own all the technology used in the Beats music service. You see, in January 2014, Beats Electronics launched a music streaming service called Beats Music. They tried differentiating themselves from other services like Spotify by claiming to offer the freedom of an on-demand subscription service combined with, quote, features that would give you that feeling only music that moves you can give. Now, I wasn't sure what that meant back in 2014, and I'm still not sure what it means today, but Iovine often mentioned the importance of playing the right song at the right time, and how the only thing more important than the song you're currently listening to is the song that plays next. So I guess they were trying to offer a music service that played songs in a more satisfying sequence than Spotify, although I did try the Beats music service back then and never noticed any real-world benefits of that design goal. But that unique approach to streaming music was exactly what Apple was looking for. At the time, Spotify was exploding in popularity all around the world, and iTunes was being left behind in the dust. So Apple had to take swift action. which is why they began acquisition negotiations with Beats just 4 months after their Beats Music service debuted. And even though it feels like Apple was kind of cheating by simply buying Beats Music service and rebranding it as their own, it's actually the same way iTunes was created. Apple bought a piece of software called SoundJam and had its creators join Apple to develop the technology even further until eventually it became iTunes. The key point is that the software looked and behaved quite a bit differently after Apple aided in its development. And the same can be said for Beats Music. Apple didn't simply slap their name and logo on it and call it a day. They actually spent about a year adding features and optimizing the interface to make sure they were creating the best service possible. Now, it's debatable whether or not Apple Music was very good when it first came out in 2015, but that's something I'll touch on later in the video. Because there's still one more reason why Eddie Q said Apple bought Beats, and that was for their, quote, great headphones. Now, this is also something that's debatable, especially if you're asking an audiophile, since there's still a lot of criticism of Beats' sound signature being too bass heavy, but keep in mind that audiophiles aren't really Beats' target demographic. Instead, they market to customers who love music with a lot of bass and want headphones that deliver a deep, satisfying thump. But I honestly believe Apple wasn't as concerned about the quality or design of Beats headphones as much as they were impressed by how much revenue they generated. In 2014 alone, Beats Electronics earned over $1 billion in sales from their headphones, which made them one of the most valuable headphone manufacturers in the world. And keep in mind, Apple was working on a pair of headphones themselves, the original AirPods, which would be released 2 years later. So those are the 3 reasons why Apple bought Beats: for their talent, music service, and great headphones. But the question you might be asking now is, was that $3 billion purchase worth it? And while the answer may vary slightly depending on who you ask, if you judge it strictly from a revenue standpoint, the Beats acquisition was absolutely worth it. Not only is the company generating upwards of $1 billion each year, but it helped position Apple as one of the biggest headphone manufacturers in the world in just a couple years. And that isn't even considering how much money was saved by using Beats Music as the foundation of Apple's streaming service, since Iovine and Dr. Dre had already negotiated contracts with music labels and done most of the legwork required to establish a reputable music service. All Apple had to do was focus on the features and interface. So just how well did Iovine and Dr. Dre do in creating Apple Music? Well, apparently not great, because the two were let go from Apple just 4 years after being hired on, and when the service debuted in 2015, it was met with pretty cold reception. The app was riddled with bugs, the Connect feature was criticized as being pointless and was later removed by Apple, the interface was considered to be unappealing and difficult to navigate, and listeners were frustrated by a lack of music discovery features, something that happened to be Spotify's biggest strength. Now, Apple has since updated Apple Music several times to address those issues, and is now a much better music service than it was in 2015. So while not everything worked out perfectly, the decision to buy Beats ultimately worked out in Apple's favor. Alright guys, if you enjoyed my explanation, don't forget to like and subscribe with the bell notification so you'll be notified of future explanation videos just like this one.